Welcome to the first episode of what I'm going to call the Train and Learn series. So kind of the idea behind this is I want to give you guys something that you can listen to, whether you're training, say you're at home or you're running, doing cardio or something like that, and something you can learn from and learn from different people and gain value from. So that's kind of what we're going to get into today. The first person that we have today is Alex, who you can find on Instagram at Doorenbos Endurance. And he's someone who's got a lot of experience in endurance training. He's done Ironman, he's done marathons. He's very experienced, so I think it'd be very cool to learn from him and kind of be able to benefit and learn more about how you can improve running, how you could train more efficiently and effectively, and overall train smarter. So, Alex, I just want to start by kind of explaining what you've done, how you got into endurance, and then what you've kind of done, like events and stuff like that.
So my name is Alex Doorenbos. I've been doing endurance activities. I like to call them activities because they're not always races. But for the last 3 years, I've actually done every distance of triathlon that you can. So I've done the sprint, I've done an Olympic, I've done a half Ironman, which is a 70.3, and then I've also done a full Ironman, which is 140.6 total miles. And I love it. I got into it kind of just because I wasn't a huge fan of the weight room and playing other sports, lacrosse. Collegiately, it's kind of required that you're in the weight room or doing some other form of activity. And I kind of turned to these endurance sports just because they brought more enjoyment to me, just being outside and pushing your body to that next level. So that's kind of how I got into it. And like Chase said, I've done all kinds of different activities, whether it's just running races or also the triathlon as well. So it's kind of where I've spent a majority of my time.
Yeah, if you want to kind of touch on kind of where you started, so let's say, I don't know, it would be like what was your first endurance like activity you done or like a triathlon, and maybe what were your times for everything you did, and what the distances were for that, and kind of where you're at now, and see like what the difference was from where you first started to where you now are currently.
Yeah, so 3 years ago, one of my family friends, he's an older guy. He was doing this triathlon for the first time. And we were kind of teasing each other about it up north about it. And I figured, man, like maybe I should try this and just train with him and give him some extra motivation, because I knew it's something that I could do. Because the first one was a sprint, and it's like a 0.46 mile swim, a 15-mile bike, and then a 5K. So it's nothing crazy. It's just like your first real time ever doing 3 back-to-back activities full out. So you kind of have no idea what to expect. So through that, I used my training to kind of push him in a way and keep him motivated, because it was his first time like ever doing anything like that. He'd never done a running event before. So he just wanted to find something to do that was active. And through that, I kind of almost fell in love with the gains you can make throughout that. I think my first goal was to do a sprint in under an hour and a half, and like I had no idea what to expect. And it was like 2 days before where I didn't think I was going to meet that goal, because I was like getting more nervous. I'm not really a good swimmer. I have no idea how to transition. Like I've watched YouTube videos, but there's a lot more that goes into the actual race than just swimming, biking, and running, nutrition. I was so new that I was just banking on everything that I learned from the internet to kind of get me through that first race.
Sure.
And just it was going to be helpful knowing someone else I was racing. And I believe my official time was like 1:28:06. So I beat my goal. I'll never forget it because it was like 90 degrees out, humid. It's a July race in Minneapolis, and it like destroyed me. I was wrecked. I couldn't eat anything. We were like going to go get ice cream after the race. I couldn't even commit to eating the ice cream. My body was so jacked up because I had never really pushed myself as hard as I did in just that sprint race.
Yeah.
And that was a huge learning experience because it was even different than the training. Just going 110% for an hour and 28 minutes, you can't really explain it.
Yeah.
Everything hurt. The stomach aches were insane. Like it was nuts, especially in the heat. But yeah, so that was my first experience. And I remember crossing the finish line and I was like trying to drink water, and my parents were kind of like, oh, like, how are you feeling? Da, da, da. I remember getting home and my mom being like, all right, so you're never going to do this again, because I felt like crap. And I was like, no, I'm addicted. Like, let's go. Like, I love this feeling.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of where it all started with that first race. And that was 3 years ago this summer. So.
Oh, wow. And now today, what do you think you could currently run that like a sprint race in? I know that's not really what you're training for. What do you think you could?
I don't know, honestly. Since then, my fastest 5K time was like an 18:39, I believe, at the Turkey Day 5K. It's my favorite race of the year.
Yeah.
And then I've never done like a 15-mile time trial on the bike, but I would assume my 15-mile bike would be about 40 minutes. So that puts me at an hour with transition. And then my swim would probably take me 12 minutes, 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So that's 15 minutes off that time.
Yeah. It's incredible.
Which is a lot of time in a short race. 15 minutes is a lot of time in a short race. But who knows? So it also depends on the conditions and all that stuff.
Yeah. So now if you just kind of want to touch on your training and what you've like kind of how you set it up, and like even touching on like say from there, say you don't have a race planned out. I don't know if you ever have an off season, or if every time you finish a race, you set a new race, or if there's like a time you give yourself off to recover. What's kind of your approach to training? Like currently you're training for an Ironman that's coming up, and like what's your approach kind of leading up towards that, and kind of how you set up when you should be running, when you should be biking, and what you kind of base your distances off of.
Yeah, so I'm signed up for the Lake Placid Ironman, and that's July 26th. I signed up for that in January, I believe. So I had plenty of time to get ready for it and everything. And right when you sign up for those events, people recommend you need 6 months to train. But I think that all depends on like your goals. If you want to finish, you could definitely train for it in 3 months and cross the finish line if your heart desired that. But right away, I think when you set a goal like that, you just have to build a base. So your base endurance is huge, and that comes just back to like lifetime miles, whether it's running or biking. That plays a huge effect in the way your body's going to handle the training load later on. Because right off the bat, your training isn't hard; it's more of the volume. For you're going 140.6 miles in under 17 hours, and that's a lot of miles for the body to handle over the swim and bike and the run. So you really just have to build kind of that tolerance in miles, so that when you get to the more intense stuff, it's not going to be as long, but the intensity is going to be so high over and over again that you can kind of handle that. And I've found that the best way to do that is through the heart rate training and just building that solid base. So for the first month or two, that's pretty much what a lot of the training is. Longer, a little slower efforts, and allowing yourself plenty of recovery time. A lot of people are like mad if they miss one training session, and sometimes it's okay to like take a break from that one training session if you need recovery, because one training session isn't going to make you cross the finish line. It can help, but just the consistency over 6 months is going to get you across the finish line. So I think that's something that a lot of people miss in endurance sports, because over even a week's period of time, you can destroy your body. Last week, I had 16 and a half hours of running and biking. Oh, and this week I've taken it a lot easier, just because that's a lot of time pushing the legs, and your body needs it. So those from 2 to 4 months out, that's when you start to pick it up a little bit. You get into those brick workouts, so you're biking and then head right into the run. A lot of it's at least 2 workouts a day, so you do like a morning and a night session. As a student, sometimes that's a little more challenging because of classes and homework. I know last week I did a lot of like noon sessions and then like a 3 o'clock session, so it's a little less recovery time between, but I'm not really pushing it too hard because of the circumstances right now. Just trying to be smart with coronavirus. But and then that's 2 to 4 months out, and then 2 to 4 months until, and then once you're like 1 to 2 months until, that's when you kind of start to tone it back a little bit. When you're 2 months out, you're still pushing it and just trying to maintain. But then that last month, there's 2 decent weeks, and then I taper 2 weeks out, just because I feel like if anything, I overtrain more often personally. That's just how I roll. I get addicted, and then I do the one more when maybe I shouldn't, or I do the extra workout when maybe I shouldn't. So I always give myself 2 weeks to taper, especially for the longer races, just because it won't hurt you. You're not going to lose 5.5 months of fitness in 2 weeks. It's just not how the body works. So yeah, that's kind of how I look to set those training goals, especially for these long races that I've kind of become more into recently.
So talk to me as like, if I know absolutely nothing, like what would you, like how would someone be able to utilize their heart rate to assess their training? Or like say someone who's just getting into running, like what would they look at in terms of their heart rate with their training?
Yeah, so I think heart rate is like one of the most key measurements in determining the training stress you've taken in the past, for example, the last 24, 48 hours, and then the next 24 or 48 hours, what you can accomplish. I think one of the most important tests on top of that you can do yourself is a max heart rate test. You just need like a basic watch or a heart rate monitor. I have a nice one, so mine's not so basic, which helps me out a little bit more. But really, there's a lot of watches out there that are very inexpensive that can provide you this data. And the max heart rate test is key for kind of setting your training zones. There's a bunch of different ways to do a max heart rate test. You can just Google them. I've got a hill that's about 2.5 miles from my house that's long and steady. And I've used that for my max heart rate tests, just running. And that's key in setting your zones, because once you know what you're capable of, you can then set like what is easy for your body. So that becomes the key part, because those easier workouts put a less strain on your body, so you're able to string more of those together. So
Sure.
if you do easy 4 or 5 days in a row, over 5 days they'll add up, but day by day it's not going to feel like a big deposit. Where if I do last Saturday was a 75-mile bike into a half marathon where I set my PR, that's going to put a huge deposit on my heart rate, and it's going to be elevated for a long period of time. That's going to put a lot of strain on my body, and that next day I'm not going to be able to go as hard, just because I'm not going to be recovered, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think the heart rate is like the key metric, and keeping those easy miles. Like when you're building that base, if you're 4 to 6 weeks out from a race, just building those easy base miles, keeping a low heart rate is going to be the best way to do that, because you can go often. If it's often and easy over time, like I said, that consistency, 6 months of consistency is going to get you across the finish line. That's going to make it, one, way more enjoyable, because it's not going to feel so hard.
Yeah.
It's just going to be easier on your body, so you don't overtrain.
So what would be like a negative effect of, say, continually running at a high heart rate, or like continually like weeks and weeks of continually pushing yourself? That's like what leads to overtraining?
Yeah, that leads to overtraining, and you don't even think about it as like, well, one, your body's going to hurt. I kind of experienced it this last fall. I had some Achilles issues, and that's just from, I was just pushing it every single day. Classes were not too intense. I had all this free time, so I was just hammering it down. And not only did your body start to like hurt, but like I felt sick. Like you're fatigued all the time. Went to the doctor, and they're like, yeah, like you're fine, man. Like nothing's coming back. But it's like this next level of fatigue that comes in, and it's just because you're not giving your body an ample amount of time to kind of absorb the training you're giving it. I used an example with a buddy the other day about your body's like a sponge when it comes to all these endurance sports. And you have to give the sponge time to absorb the training so that it stays. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. And those high intensity efforts back to back to back, eventually your body's not going to be able to absorb it because it doesn't have the time to recover. So that's really where it doesn't get dangerous necessarily, but you'll feel the effects of overtraining really quick. If even a week of everyday high intensity efforts running, you're going to feel way worse than maybe say 3 days of high intensity and 4 days of easy. So
I think that's kind of what puts such a big barrier in front of people who sign up for races like marathons or something like that. They're like, oh, I need to start training really hard. They push themselves super hard at the beginning, they get injured, and then they're now way further behind than they were to begin with. So always, yes, taking it slow is definitely beneficial, I would say, in that.
I think that has effect on motivation too, because as soon as you start to feel like crap from doing the activity,
Yeah.
like your body, like you physically just feel like crap, whether it's like pain or feeling sick, you just don't feel inclined to do it because your motivation's gone because you don't want to do it because it makes you feel bad.
Yeah.
So I think just building that base is so beneficial, and it takes time. It's not going to happen in a week. It's not going to happen in 2 weeks, but in the long run, it's so worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. How about that? Okay, so that like one injury when you were the injury, and then when you were overtrained, how did you kind of combat that? Or like, what would you recommend for someone to do? Would they completely step away from it, or just maybe back down on volume? What do you think? Like, or like, what
Yeah.
worked for you at least?
Ideally, for a triathlete, you'd want to like. So mine was an Achilles issue last November, end of October into November. Ideally, for a triathlete, what you'd like to do in that scenario is just swim a lot, because one, you're going to make a lot of gains just being in the pool if that's all you can do without injury, and it's good recovery. But I don't like swimming unless I have to do it. So I'm like the worst in that aspect, where I don't train the swim until I know I have a race coming and until I know the distance of it, because I just don't like doing it. So I probably should have been in the pool, but I just took time away and kind of treated it as a little off season.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I need to get better at personally, because if I could train all the time, I would. But the more you look at, especially the professionals, from the World Championships, Ironman World Championships in October, after that race until December, most of them are just hanging out. They'll put their bikes in their garage. They won't touch them. They'll just relax and kind of do the things that bring them joy outside of triathlon, which I think I need to work on. And I kind of forced myself to do that there in November, and a little bit of December, with just stepping away. I believe I took for sure 1 week off of everything. I didn't run or do anything, which 1 week doesn't sound like a lot of time, but for me it was horrible. And then the next week, if you look on my Strava account, I'm pretty sure I did like 2 1-mile runs, which is like next to nothing.
Yeah.
And then the next week was like 3 1-mile runs, which is next to nothing. And occasionally I just kind of got back into it. But I think the biggest thing is to actually admit that, like, once winter comes around, especially up here in the Northland, you're not going to race. So just take that time to kind of hit the reset button.
Yeah, absolutely. And then once you get back, when you do hit the reset button, do you feel like you have to start from scratch, or do you feel like you still maintain a level of fitness, if you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I definitely maintain a level of fitness. Right now I'm faster than I ever have been before in all 3 areas. And it feels weird, right? Because those like first 2 years I did this, I mean, the gains were there and you noticed them, but like it just doesn't compare. And you think, like, I think this, I know most people probably think this, taking time off, you're worried about, oh, I'm going to lose all this gain, blah, 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 XYZ. But I haven't experienced that. And if the pros are willing to take 3 months off, they don't experience that. You know what I mean? So I think that's more of a mental barrier of getting over, like, time off is okay, time away is okay. Sure. And you're not going to lose everything you gained. Now, if you take a year off and all your eating habits and all that stuff go away, then that's another story. Sure. But I think that as long as you're smart and still active, you can be active in different ways. It's not going to go away.
Sure. And then kind of another question I have for you is, do you feel, so like everyone's either geared more towards a type 2 muscle fiber, type 1, or the vast majority of people are right in the middle. So like someone like LeBron James or Zion Williamson are more geared towards like type 2 muscle fibers, probably like 80 to 20%. Or 90 to 10%, something around there, where they're very explosive athletes just from the way they were born. Whereas you get someone like Lance Armstrong, or an endurance athlete, they're more geared towards type 1 muscle fibers, so they're like 90 to 10%. Do you think you are more born to be geared as a like more type 1 muscle fibers, or do you think you might be fall in the middle? Like when you started, it was very easy from the get-go to get into like longer distance stuff.
Yeah, it was. I think I just had to put my mind to it. Like growing up, I just like hated running and everything, but it's just because I don't know, I was always playing hockey or doing something else, and it felt easier. But then, like, once I actually put my like mind to it for a month, like I was like, this isn't that bad.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was just something that I was like missing before, but it's
Sure.
also something that I never really like had tried. Right. So playing hockey and lacrosse growing up, it was like weight room, weight room, weight room. Like you're just pushed to be
Yeah.
in the weight room. You're not really like given a chance to explore those other things unless you sign up for cross country or track, which I never did because I was playing other sports. So it was like, once I tried it, it was like, oh wow, like this could be for me, right? It's like trying that new food that you think you hate and then you like it. It's like what? But yeah, I don't know. So I kind of think that maybe it's something that I was more made for because I've kind of excelled in it rapidly, and it's not always that easy. So I'm kind of lucky in that way.
Yeah. Cool. Well, speaking about food, that'll be a good transition. What's like something you've seen success with and the way you've eaten? I know there's probably tons of different ways to do it and go about it, but like, how have you seen success with your diet, or like how might that change leading up to an event in terms of just like getting closer 3 days out, 1 day out? Like, what would that look like for you?
Yeah. So I just started my like second technical kind of diet thing that I'm on for endurance athletes. For my first like year and a half, I tried to be, I can't say I went it fully because I didn't, but I tried to be more lower carb, higher fats to try and fat oxidize my body, which there's a lot of research out there that shows that's very beneficial for long course endurance athletes, not just in triathlon, trail running, those long days where you're just grinding. Might not be the highest of intensities, but you're just out there for at least 10 hours or more. So I kind of took that route, and I found that very beneficial. It kind of got hard because I'm in a family of 5, and when I'm the only one like eating that way, it's kind of a pain because you're always having to like you're eating with the family, but like they make dinner and then you always make dinner after because you're eating 3 different things. And but I found that very beneficial, and I felt it. I never felt like I was actually like bonking really in races or anything like that, or even in training sessions. And it worked for me. More recently, I've gone vegan, which I think liked even more. I feel like it's given me the next level of power output, especially on the bike, that I couldn't find before. And in addition, my running has skyrocketed within these last 3 or 4 months, and I'm about to be, what day is it today? 15th. I'm at 2.5 months vegan.
Holy cow! I didn't even know that.
Officially. Wow. So it's like just under 2.5 months, a day under 2.5 months, and it's been awesome. Like I feel great.
Yeah.
So I haven't even looked back to going back to the low carb, high fats, because I think this has helped in my recovery aspects. Like I had previously stated, Saturday was a huge day for me, and Sunday, like I was tired, but I like wanted to work out because I felt like I could work out, but I knew I shouldn't. So like I held myself back, but I knew like I felt like I could, and I think previously that those workouts would have just destroyed me. Now you can make the argument I'm in better shape and XYZ, but I also think that your food has a big role in your recovery because that's your fuel. Absolutely. So I think that kind of speaks wonders, and it's not going to work for everyone because everyone's different. So I'm not saying you go be vegan, but it's something that I tried because a lot of the top tier triathletes in the world are vegan. So I figured I'd give it a shot, and it's worked really well. As for fueling my races, I haven't raced on a vegan diet yet because it's still early in the season. And at this point, all the early season races are canceled. So I don't really have advice on that. But when I was doing the low carb, high fats, leading up to the race, nothing really changed too much. My water intake and my electrolyte intake skyrocketed about 3 or 4 days out. I'd always try and start 4 days out. It's kind of tough because 4 days out, it's like there, but you don't feel it yet. I don't start to feel like ready for the races until I'm like 2 days out. Then I start to get giddy and excited. But My water intake, electrolyte intake, nothing changed eating until 2 days before. 2 days before, my only meal that would really change was dinner. And I would carb load the 2 days dinner before, just to top everything off early. And that was always chicken parmesan for me, with extra noodles because that's how I roll. And then the one day out, morning of, was always a huge breakfast. Before I was vegan, I would make the Kodiak cake pancakes, just like as many of them as I could eat until I couldn't eat anymore. And that would be like my main fueling meal. I felt like, with that 2 days out, the dinner, and then that breakfast, the one day out. And then from there, I would kind of ease up on the eating, just because I want to make sure I digest everything before the race time. So, I mean, I would have a normal lunch. For Madison, we went to some like wrap shop, and I just got a wrap, like a chicken wrap, nothing different, just something I would normally eat. And then for dinner that night, we got Chipotle, and it was just like simple, wasn't over the top, just what my body's used to. And then the morning of the race, I had an English muffin, banana, and then those noon tabs. They make it like a superior electrolyte one of those. So it's just, I forget what the name of it, it's escaping me. But it's like triple the electrolytes or something crazy like that.
Salt tablets or no? Or is that
it's like a salt tab, but it's the same like size as a salt tab, but it's not salt.
Gotcha.
But I mean, it's the same concept.
Sure.
But then I'd take one of those the morning of, just to make sure everything's ready to go. And I felt like that was, so I tried that last June for the 70.3, because both my big races last year were in Madison. So it's super nice because for the half Ironman, I scouted out my meals where I was going to get them, because when you're in a hotel, you can't cook. I mean, you have a microwave. I brought a griddle to make my pancakes, but it's a lot harder to like make homemade stuff in a hotel.
Yes.
It's not possible. So that's the 70.3 was my trial run. And then when I got back for the full in September last year, I did the same exact thing, went to the same exact restaurants because that had already worked. Mm-hmm. So I was lucky enough to have races in the same spot, and that kind of worked for me. But that's kind of my preference. And I know how races this year are going to go because my vegan diet's a little different. So it's something I'll have to experiment with, and I haven't even thought about it really, because I think racing right now is not even on my radar with everything going on. So
yeah, I feel you. Now, how about in terms of like on the course type of stuff, or like with your training? Like, I don't know about in terms of Ironman, like what they give. I know like marathons, sometimes they give out like Gatorade, water, goos, like food. They give out even someplace like Coke, stuff like that. Like, what does your fueling look like during a race, and what does it look like leading up to a race and using things like goos, and then kind of like what you've seen has worked for you or what you prefer?
Yeah. For training, I use, and for training and racing, I do use the goo Roctanes. It's like the ultra endurance goo formula. There's just like normal goos, and then there's the goo Roctane. It's just the next level. It's got more minerals, vitamins, all that fun stuff. And then I use Gatorade Endurance. Main reason I use both those is because that is what Ironman uses. So I want to use what they have on the course, so that one, I don't have to carry as much of it with me, and two, if I drop something, if I lose a water bottle on the bike, anything like that, when I stop at an aid station, they have what I'm used to. So I'm not grabbing something foreign on the course. So I always make sure that, I know this year Ironman changed their nutrition bars, so I'm gonna have to order some of those to use beforehand. But I always make sure that what I'm using during training and racing is what they also have on the course, just in case, so that I know that my body's used to it and I always have an ample amount. But from a training aspect, I try not to use the goos ever, almost, unless it's a long day or a race simulation day. I use the Gatorade Endurance a lot more often. I use one bottle of Gatorade Endurance every time I'm on the bike. I never use anything really when I'm running, but I try and build up that tolerance to using my body as fuel during the training sessions. So when I get to a race and I have the goos and I have the Gatorade, I have all you could ever want. I have the bananas, chicken broth even, which is actually surprisingly good when you're at mile 13 of an Ironman run. It just calms the body for some reason. I don't know why. But I try to train without it so that on race day when I have it, it's like a treat. And it just provides that extra boost. And I think that's helped a lot. It makes kind of some of the training sessions suck. Like they're horrible because you need that fuel for those last 15, 20 minutes. But just pushing through that, I think it makes your body capable of burning that next level, which only gives me an advantage on race day. I'm not necessarily recommending that for everyone, but that's what works for me. And I found it really beneficial. On race day, though, it's a completely different story because it's a long day, especially for a full Ironman. And the last thing you want to get behind on is nutrition, because through your training, you never train a full day like an Ironman. Like my longest training day ever was 6 hours of total exercise, and the Ironman took me 11:41. So that's just over half. And that's a long 5 hours and 41 minutes of exercise after that 6 hours. So on race day, I had my breakfast, my English muffin, banana, that electrolyte drink. Then move into just sipping on G2. Like I like the G2 Gatorades for taste more before the race. I think the regular Gatorades are a little too much flavor for me sometimes. So I sipped on G2 before. Just making sure that I'm hydrated 100%. And then about 10 minutes before, I took my first goo Roctane. I know this all because I actually made a Google Doc with everything that had at this time. So before the race, before I even got there, at this time I need this. I had it all planned out. And then on the bike, I even had a different part of a Google Doc printed out and taped on my bike and stuff like that to just keep reminding me when I need to take stuff. But yeah, so about 15 minutes before you get in the water, 10 minutes before I got in the water, I had a goo Roctane, did the swim. Swim was an hour and 20 minutes. As soon as I get out of the water, take the wetsuit off, I get to transition one. I had a goo there for me to take in transition. So I take that goo. I had a little mini Gatorade in transition. So my goal was to get out of the water, get to transition, pound the goo and the Gatorade just to make sure everything's topped off one last time. And then hit the bike. Starting on the bike, it was drinks every 30 minutes or as needed. So for sure every 30 minutes, if I needed a sip or something within that 30 minutes, feel free to take one. But I needed to for sure be taking that Gatorade Endurance every 30 minutes. And then a gel every 45 minutes on my clock that I have running. And then I had UCAN energy bars. And that's like a fat carb source. So it's actually a solid food. And I had those every hour and a half on the bike. And then I also had a little treat on the bike for the last 25 miles. I had a salted nut roll just to kind of keep me motivated, get a little salt in me because you're losing all that when you're sweating that much. So yeah, that's what I did for the bike. And like I said, I had all those bars taped with electrical tape to my top tube on my bike. So when I'm riding, all I had to do was grab it, rip it off, eat it. It was all right there. And then on the run's a different story because it's a lot harder to stomach eating on the run. I did the goos every 45 minutes still. I didn't run with any liquid. I ran with a water bottle, but it wasn't any electrolyte formula. And then I used just a swig of Gatorade cups at every aid station. And then I did a banana. So they have bananas cut in half and like peeled open. So you just have to grab it as you're running by. I did half a banana every 2 aid stations just to try and avoid cramping. And it worked. It worked amazing. Like I never cramped or anything like that. So that was kind of the fueling for the race. And that's its own battle in a way, because if you miss a fueling halfway through the bike, that can set you way back. So it's almost more important that you stay on top of that. And, take an extra 10 seconds in transition to make sure you get the fuel than to just head out without it, because that 10 seconds could cost you a lot more later if you just miss it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then how do you feel like coming off? So first you swim for an hour and a half. You bike for how long? Are you biking for? Like 4?
It took me 6:10, I believe, 6 hours and 10 minutes.
All right, so you're moving for a total of like 8 hours. How do you like feel heading into a full marathon? Like after you've gone through that, like do you?
Yeah. So honestly, the worst part of the marathon was getting off the bike. Like my muscles. It was a colder day in Madison for the full, and I remember like unclipping, and I'm just like chilling, about to get off, because they make you stop. They make you slow way down, and then there's like 10 feet where you can get off your bike. So I'm like trying to get off, and I remember putting my right leg down and coming to lift my left leg over, and my hip flexors just cramped, because it's like if you think about getting on a bike, you have to pull your leg way over. And I had just been sitting in like the one with my leg straight down for 6 hours and 10 minutes, not even thinking about it. And I was rushing, trying to get it over, and my hip flexors were just cramped. And I was like, oh God, this is going to be horrible. Like I remember thinking like, this is going to be the worst run I've ever had in my entire life. Like,
Yeah.
I hate this. Why did I do this? And then whatever. So I'm walking. I'm not even walking. I'm like probably walking like I got a stick up my butt because my legs hurt so bad, just because everything just cramped getting off the bike. I get to the transition 2. I had another Gatorade and a goo. I drank that Gatorade. I took the goo. I put my shoes on. I like sat there for a minute. I was just jaw jacking with the guy next to me, because we were like, this sucks. Whatever. We hate this. Why did we sign up for this? And then I got up to run, and like nothing hurt. Like it was just like, I don't even know what happened. Like I was sore, but nothing was cramping. And I was like, all right, like let's ride. So me and this guy took off together. We ran together for the first few miles. And that ended up being like the dream marathon I could have. I ran a 3:41, I think.
Holy cow.
After that bike, which I think was like, I forget the mile splits. It was 8 something for the mile splits. And I went from like being like, this is going to be horrible, to like 1 mile in, I felt amazing. I was like, all right, let's ride. Like just take it easy and save some for the end. So it's a weird feeling, but that is why we do the brick runs and the brick running bikes, so that you go from biking right into running. But it's just, there's nothing like actually a race. It's just different, no matter how hard you try.
Yeah, insane.
Yeah, it's quite a feeling, because your body's so mad at you. But it's fun.
Did you hit a wall at all on that run, or did you?
No, the only wall I hit in that entire race was mile 80 of the bike. And that's just because it was so damn cold that it was hard to drink. Like I was like forcing myself to drink on the 30 minutes, but I probably should have been drinking more often. But I was so cold, I didn't feel thirsty, because I didn't feel like I was sweating.
Yeah.
So because we got out of the water, you're soaking wet. You get on the bike, it's 60 degrees and windy when you're soaking wet, when you're moving that fast. So it just took me forever to warm up. And then once I finally warmed up, I was so far behind on that drinking that at mile 80 I cramped on the bike. And those were the only real cramps that held me back. Once I got off those cramps off the bike were more just like, oh God, this is gonna suck. Like they didn't affect my transition or anything. I just took a few deep breaths, and then the run I didn't cramp at all. It was like easy running.
And then how long does it take after that race? Were you like KO'd for like a week, or like how long does it take to recover?
So this is how I know that I probably had more in the tank. The next day wasn't that bad. I was like, damn, I was sore, but whatever. 2 days after sucked. I was like, this is horrible. 3 days after was better. And then on the 4th day, I actually went for like a 35-mile bike ride.
Holy cow.
So I showed up to this group ride, and one of the ladies that was there, she's a beast. Her husband was at the race too. And she was like, why are you here? And I was like, I don't know, I felt good. Like, let's go. And she was like, you're nuts, dude. My husband can't even like move. And this is
Wow.
it was like his 11th Ironman or something.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And I was like, well, like,
Yeah.
I guess, you know, yeah. So I think, and I do think I had more in the tank because even after I crossed the finish line, I went back to the hotel, ate a whole pizza. Then we went for a walk. We walked and got some ice cream. Like, it was just like, I mean, I was tired naturally, but like, I didn't feel dead like everyone else did. So it was kind of weird, but
Wow. Wow. That's yeah, very interesting. I definitely want to do it someday. My only fear is swimming.
yeah, swim's the worst. It's
Yeah.
the worst. And on my race day, it is the highest swim DNF in recent years because it was so dang windy. So the waves were so big, you couldn't really see where you were going. And every time you pulled your head up to look, the wave would hit you in the face.
Oh, wow.
So it was like you'd come up for air and you get water in your mouth, which makes it kind of hard to get air. But it was a grind, but it was kind of fun.
Wow. So what would you say, like, what would you recommend, say, for, okay, say someone like just general person right now, they have tons of free time, they want to get into running, they want to become a better runner. What would you say, we kind of touched on it before, but what would you say they should focus on to just improve like their ability? I'm sure most people probably running about 3 miles or something like that. How would you improve your time in a mile or like 3 miles or something like that over just, is it just training over time consistently or just continuing to like stick with slow runs, or like what would you advise from like your experience for somebody who just wants to lower their shorter distance runs?
Yeah, I think first off is just like set a goal because it's really hard to do anything without setting a goal. So whatever that goal is, it doesn't even have to be crazy, whether it's like a 5K in 23 minutes or 25 minutes, just set it so you have something to like look forward to. And then I think you kind of have to self-evaluate, like just be honest with yourself. Like, have I run a lot previously? Like, don't think you're better than you are because it'll only hurt you. Like, just admit like, all right, this is something I'm new to. I want to get into it. And if that's where you are, just take it really slow at first. You have to kind of build that base. If you don't have that base, you can drop your time, but without that base, once you drop that time, you're not going to like be able to take that further, if that makes sense. So to get like consistent drops over time, you have to have that base. So I don't know, like a month and a half of just base building. I think that will let you know whether, all right, I need a little more time building a base, or okay, I'm happy with this base. Like, let's progress from there. And if you feel like you have a base from that standpoint, I think it then keys into four easier runs a week, 2 tempo runs, or some 400 meter, 800 meter repeats. Maybe start out with some 400 meter repeats just to kind of get your legs used to that higher pace or that goal pace. And then a rest day, I think. I think that once you have a base, though, and you can start to get into those tempo days, you're going to see some differences, and you're like, holy smokes. Like, wow, a month and a half ago, I didn't think this was possible, and now here I am. So, yeah, I think once you have that base built, 400 meter, 800 meter repeats will help, especially for those shorter 5K, even 10K distances. You can get up to some mile repeats. But, yeah, just make sure you set a goal and you know that goal pace for that goal.
I think something cool that we talked about before too is something that I'm an advocate of as well. Is like in the beginning, just starting with like duration. So like instead of shooting for a mile, just say I'm going to run for 30 minutes that day.
Yeah,
that's something that's really cool too.
Yeah. I'm a huge advocate for that to people that are like brand new to endurance sports, because sometimes like if I write a plan for you and it says like a 6 mile run on Tuesday, and you're like going to stress out because you're like, oh my gosh, I've never run 6 miles before. Like, I have no idea what this is going to be like. But then like, if I transition that into like a 45-minute run, it's going to look at some of you like, okay, like I can run for 45 minutes. Like, it doesn't matter the pace, doesn't matter how long it takes me. I just got to run for 45 minutes. And I think that makes it a lot more manageable and just easier to get out and do it, because you know, all right, I just need to run for 45 minutes. I have no idea how long it's going to take me to run 6 miles. What if 3 miles in I feel like crap and I slow down, right? So I think setting those time goals, especially if you're brand new to it, are huge. It'll help you build that base. So 45 minutes, I'm going to keep my heart rate under 150 beats per minute, or whatever your zone 2 max is, or whatever kind of goal you have with the tools you have in your possession. I think those time goals are huge, especially in the early stages.
Very cool. Yeah. Very awesome. And then another thing that I'm sure a lot of people have questions on, or like type of gear that they could use. So say probably the most common question is what's a good pair of running shoes that I could use, or things that you liked for maybe
Yeah.
long distance runs or short distance runs or stuff like that.
Yeah, so I track all my shoes on Strava, which is an app I highly suggest you all download if you're gonna, even just for running. If you're just gonna run, you should download Strava. It's super nice for me because it's kind of geared towards swimming, biking, and running. So I get to use all the features on it. It's super beneficial because I can track all my shoes in there, shoe mileage, all the different types of shoes I have. When I last wore them, all that random stuff that makes me kind of like a gear nerd, but I love it. In the same breath, I can do that with all my bikes too, which is kind of cool. So like tracking tire wear, how many miles are on the tires, stuff like that, which like you don't really think about, but it's actually important because you don't want to get a flat on race day because that's just a pain in the butt. But for shoes, I love the Hoka One. I run in the Clifton 6 right now is the newest model they have out. The Clifton 7 comes out June 1st, pending everything that's going on in the world. But I love the Clifton 6. It's like their pride shoe. Like it's like the one they recommend to everyone. Like this is the pride and joy. Try the Clifton 6. It's got more cushion. It's just more cushion, more support. And I think that's super beneficial for the zone 2 training, low heart rate training, because a lot of it's just longer, slower. You're going to be putting a lot of miles on, and I think that shoe provides great benefit. In addition to the Clifton 6, I run the Rincon. I don't know how you say it. It's also a Hoka shoe. That one's lighter. It still has cushion. Hoka is known for the cushion and support. It's not cushioned. So it's still cushiony, but not, I don't know. It's just a speedier shoe. It's a lot more lightweight. Do a lot more of like the mile repeats and the tempo runs in that shoe. It's more fun to go fast in than the Clifton. And that's why I think it's important to also have more than one pair of running shoes. A lot of people run in the same pair of running shoes every single day. And I think that's just asking for injury. Even if it's the same style of shoe, but just two pairs of it. Say you really only love one shoe and you just want to run in that one shoe, just get another pair. Rotate them every other day or every 2-3 days. Because even then they're not going to be the exact same. And I think just the wear pattern is beneficial to change that up. But I train in the Clifton 6 and the Rincon mostly. I got a few other shoes that I own and I just occasionally run in, mess around with. I got the New Balance 1080 recently, and that's a pretty cushioned shoe. I race in Nike Next Percent, like their Pride and Joy marathon racing shoe. It's got the carbon plate, and if you can, I would buy that shoe because it's like cheating. It's like steroids for running, but it's legal, so it's kind of cool. It's cheating, but.
And then how long do you go for each pair of shoes until like you're no longer able to use them for training or for racing?
I aim for 350 miles, and some people go further, some people go less. I personally, that's where I've found that I notice, especially in the Clifton 6, I get to 350 and it's time for a new pair. The Rincones, I'm at 200. I'm at like 188, I think, 190 something, just under 200. It doesn't really matter, but I think those are about ready to get replaced. But they're coming out with a new pair in June. I think it's June 1st as well with the Clifton. So I'm just gonna wait. I'll be okay without them, especially with no races really coming up soon. But I aim for 350 miles or until there's like a noticeable difference, and you'll notice it. Your feet will start to hurt more, your shins or your knee. You'll feel something, and you'll be like, I'm not changing anything. As long as you're not adding on crazy mileage. I mean, if you add on 40 miles, you're going to feel that. So it might not be the shoes. But as long as you're staying consistent and all of a sudden something's off, it doesn't hurt to kind of track that mileage and see where you're at.
And then one last kind of question I just thought of just now is, so say, for example, this is like completely different direction. But say, for example, someone signs up for a race, like a half marathon or a marathon or something, and like say it continue to be cold. Do you think someone – from your experience, could take like treadmill running with their entire training and then run on the race on concrete wherever? And do you think they'd be able to still do well?
Yeah, I totally think so. I think the biggest thing for training on the treadmill is make sure if you're running on the treadmill, make sure that the incline is on level 1, which is something like not a lot of people think about. Not a lot
Yeah.
of people. It's the most, or if you can do half, I would do a half of an incline on my treadmill. It only goes like 1, 2, 3, or 4, so I put it on 1 here. Or even if you're at a gym or something, bump that up a little bit because the normal ground you run on most often isn't perfectly flat. So it's really hard to train on a treadmill that's like perfectly flat. And a lot of times if they're perfectly flat and you're stepping on them, they go down a little bit. So it's almost like it's a slight decline. Now, I'm not saying they're all like this because some of the nice ones are like stupid nice. But if you have one of those, you're probably pretty good at running because they're super expensive. But my recommendation if you're doing a lot of treadmill running is make sure it's always at least 1 on there because that is the most realistic to running outside. And it's going to be a lot easier on your joints, especially when you step down and then you bring that foot forward. If it's at 0, a lot of times when you come to put your foot back down, it has to go down a little bit more because it's like you're running downhill. And over time, that's just horrible on your lower body.
Sure.
So that's my number 1 tip, and it's definitely doable. It just depends how your body reacts to it. My body isn't a huge treadmill fan. I've been on the treadmill the last 2 days because we got a bunch of snow up here and it's horrible and it's cold and I don't want to go outside.
Yeah.
It just makes me a wimp. I could go outside and just choose not to.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's totally something you can do. You just be smart about it and seriously try running with the treadmill at 1 or half of an incline. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Definitely gonna start implementing that. And then last, let's say we kind of covered a lot of stuff, but like key takeaways for someone who's just getting into running. So one thing was like the heart rate and stuff like that. We'll just go over it like one more time. What you like, let's say like 3, maybe like 2 or 3 takeaways for someone who's just getting to running, what they should focus on.
Yeah. First one, low heart rate. Find whatever your zone 1, zone 2 is, however you want to do that. If you don't have a heart rate monitor, there's like a heart rate calculator you can find online with a spreadsheet. Find that out in the same breath. That goes into number 1. If you're first starting out, easier is better. Don't push yourself because you're just going to feel like crap. You're going to be way more sore, and it's not going to build that aerobic base. You need that aerobic base if this is something you're just starting out with and you want to stick with. Step number 2 is steps per minute or your cadence. A lot of people don't realize how big of a role this plays in your running. You want to try and aim for if you're first starting out, you probably want to try and aim for 170 steps per minute. Ideally, you'd want to be somewhere 175, 180, 185 steps per minute, depending on the terrain. 180 is a good average. Focus on that. Make sure you're stepping underneath your body. When you bring your foot through, you're not stepping way out in front of you. That puts a lot of stress on your joints, your lower body. Try and keep that centered, and having a shorter, faster stride, keep those steps per minute up. That's going to help you a lot in the long run. And then lastly, just have fun. Don't worry about like the miles and stuff. Don't worry about the splits right away. None of that matters when you're just starting out, especially this year, because who knows if anyone's ever going to race. So I think if this is something you want to get into, now's the perfect time because you can do it without having to face any results. You can just run. Like nothing can stop you from just running and just training, building that base. If anything, if nothing happens this year, you're going to have 7.5 more months of just building a base, which like will put you strides ahead of anyone who doesn't take advantage of that. So I think now is like the best time because there's no races coming up. You can just focus on staying healthy and building that base. So
awesome. Well, thank you very much for taking your time. This may have gone longer than we expected, but I really like every time you talk, I learn a lot as well. So
yeah,
it's cool learning from it's one thing to learn from people who put stuff out and information and stuff from people who are watching YouTube videos. But it's another thing for someone who's like actually doing it and what they learned from their experiences, like what they've gained from learning from things they've maybe failed from or stuff like that. Because I know I've learned a lot too from failing. So it's cool to learn from people who have that like actual experience. So thank you. I appreciate it. And then where could everyone find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Doorenbos Endurance on Instagram. feel free to like DM me stuff. I get a lot of DMs of questions just about like everything. I post a lot of like the stats from my runs and bikes and stuff on there. I'm not swimming a lot right now because the lakes are freezing and all the pools are closed. So don't ask me about swimming. Yeah. I get a lot of people be like, why don't you ever swim? And it's because the pools are closed and the lakes are cold. That's why I don't swim right now. And I don't like it. So get that out of the way. But yeah, feel free to ask me any questions other than why aren't you swimming? And I'm happy to answer them. I post, like I said, a lot of my stats on there. So like for a run, I'll post what my average heart rate was. I'll try and post my cadence and all that stuff. Sometimes I forget just because I don't know, I get home from a run and I try and post it right away, but I'm like sweaty and freaking out and all that stuff. But I try and post all that stuff. Yeah, I'm always open for questions. I'm always open to offer advice. I've been offering quite a few people advice during this quarantine. So don't feel like you're bothering me because it's kind of fun and it's something that I'm passionate about. So I know Chase can probably relate to this, but if you ask us about something we're passionate about, it never feels like you're a pain because we enjoy talking about it. Absolutely. So yeah, just feel free to contact me.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Alex. And then thank you everyone for tuning in. And then just be on the lookout for more of this kind of content and videos coming up in the future. But thank you all. Appreciate you all.